On this video, we are going to talk about the Jacobean Age. The Jacobean Era refers to the period of English and Scottish history that coincides with the reign of the King James of England, who has also James VI of Scotland. The Jacobean Era succeeds the Elizabeth Era and precedes the Caroline Era, and specialized in architecture, visual arts, decorative arts, and literature in predominated on that period. The word Jacobean is derived from the Hebrew name Jacob, which is the original from the English name James.
Woman's Constancy by John Donne. Now thou hast loved me one whole day. Tomorrow when thou leavest, what wilt thou say? Wilt thou then antedate some new made vow, or say that now we are not just those persons which we were, or that oaths made in reverential fear of love and his wrath any may forswear, or as true deaths true marriages untie, so lovers' contracts, images of those, bind but till sleep, death's image, them unloose, or your own end to justify. For having purposed change and falsehood, you can have no way but falsehood to be true. Vain lunatic, against these capes I could dispute and conquer if I would, which I abstain to do, for by tomorrow I may think so too.
Vanitas Vanitatum, from The Devil's Law Case by John Webster. All the flowers of the spring meet to perfume our burying. These have but their growing prime, and man does flourish but his time. Survey our progress from our birth. We are set, we grow, we turn to earth. Courts of dew and all delights, all bewitching appetites, sweetest breath and clearest eye, like perfumes go out and die, and consequently this is done, as shadows wait upon the sun. Vain the ambition of kings, who seek by trophies and dead things to leave a living name behind, and weave but nets to catch the wind.
Also known as the Jacobean Era. So, all right, let's dive right in. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on the Renaissance since we've already got a few lessons covering that period and its main authors in detail, but we can't rightly talk about the 17th century of British literature without mentioning William Shakespeare. It's the biggest name in the field. He's the big daddy, the big cheese. He wrote plays and poems that were immensely popular, and we've got videos that cover a lot of them. Some of the most important pieces that he wrote are, the standouts, Hamlet, Romeo and Juliet. If you study literature, he's often the figure to which, all other writers are compared. So, totally important guy. Of course, he wasn't the only writer to make a name for himself in the early 17th century. There was also his frenemy, Ben Jonson, a fellow dramatist and poet. Jonson's most famous for satirical stage productions that illuminated human flaws via darkly comedic plots. Some famous Ben Jonson works include, and this one, I say Volpone, I've heard Volpone, you call it what you will, The Alchemist and Bartholomew Fair. Jonson was also known for his masks or elaborate stage plays produced in the royal court, kind of like an ancient version of a Lady Gaga concert. One other important part of literary culture in the early 17th century was the appearance of metaphysical poets like John Donne. These poets were extremely clever and crafty with their words, but they also really meditate on some heavy subjects like, what is religion, what is love. Their poetry is marked by their intricate phrasing and extended metaphors. If it helps, you can kind of think of them as poetic show-offs, although that shouldn't detract from the fact that they were often talking about really important themes. Before moving on from the Renaissance, let's just mention a couple other cultural landmarks from that time. A little bit prior to the 17th century, the printing press had kicked into high gear in England, and this allowed literature to be mass-produced for the first time, and that's huge. So it's not just available to the elite. One of the biggest beneficiaries of this move of the printing press was the Bible. In particular, the King James Bible was completed in 1611, and this was more or less the definitive English language Bible and a massively important piece of literature at the time. I mean, the Bible's influence is everywhere in English literature. It's almost impossible to overstate how influential it is. Also, other disciplines like the sciences really began to gel during this period, and that was led by major thinkers and essayists like Francis Bacon, whose work brought about the scientific method, which hopefully you're familiar with from science classes. So we owe a lot to Bacon.